Just look at her face. She has an evil smile. She even has the eyebrows. Devil child. Welcome back to another true story animation. But are we even believing that these are true anymore? Because I'm not. So today I came across this story called I Wish I Never Opened My Stepmom's Phone. I saw this and I was just so confused. I need to know what it means. Is the stepmom evil? What is going on inside of her phone? I have to know now. That's how these animations get you. They make you want to know. Time for the headset. On. What is this stepmom up to?
I was always a daddy's girl growing up. My dad and I did everything together, but it got to me to end up calling a stranger to our home just to get back at my stepmother. I can't remember exactly how my family imploded, but my mom found out my dad was having an affair with this woman, Helen.
Hello, Helen. Did she know that this man was married with a child? That's what I'm wondering. Because if so, Helen is not a nice person. Can already tell.
Then my dad left my mom for Helen. Then, worst of all, he proposed to Helen before the divorce was even finalized.
Wow, Dad moves fast. Also, Dad has bought the biggest diamond ring. Not only is the diamond part big, but the ring is like this thick. Whose finger is that fitting on?
I was devastated. I knew I would never really trust my father again. I convinced myself that Helen had manipulated my dad. He never would have done this to my mom and me if she hadn't sunk her claws into him. I hated her with every fiber of my being. I looked forward to the moment my dad would ask me to live with him after the divorce. I imagined all the ways I would tell him no, that he was a liar, and I wouldn't live with him for $1 million.
Oh, poor Dad. That must hurt. Your own child doesn't want to spend time with you. That's when you know it's bad. Maybe it's better off that her parents aren't together anymore. Maybe it's a good thing.
I imagined all the ways I would tell him no, that he was a liar, and I wouldn't live with him for $1 million. But he never asked. Just accepted a custody deal where he got me every other weekend. I was stunned.
Oh, okay, so Dad doesn't want you living with him anymore. Nope, but he'll have you on weekends. Why was that literally my dad, though?
And so hurt. He didn't even want me? He would rather have Helen than his own daughter?
Of course he would. Helen has sparkly hair. Who wouldn't want to get close to someone whose hair literally sparkles?
My first few visits to his new house were awful.
I'm gonna guess it was an awful trip to her dad's house because look at those tires. They are not round. That car is bumping up and down. That must be horrible to get inside of.
Being in the same room as Helen made me see red. She was loud, annoying, and took up all my dad's attention. She would talk about all the bad Tinder dates she'd been on before she'd finally met my dad at the grocery store.
That's a bit weird to speak about in front of a child. That's really weird. Why would you do that? Okay.
Like meeting a married guy and stealing him away from his family was cute. I wanted to find a way to get my dad to break up with her and go back to being my dad. I was talking to my friend about the situation, and she had a great idea. She said I should reactivate Helen's Tinder profile and convince my dad she was unfaithful.
Oh gosh, this is not a good idea. This is going to cause a huge argument between them. But then again, I guess that's what she wanted to do. So it's a perfect idea. I personally would be too scared to do that though. No, thank you.
I was talking to my friend about the situation, and she had a great idea. She said I should reactivate Helen's Tinder profile and convince my dad she was unfaithful. That seemed like a great way to both get back at my dad and to get Helen out of the picture. Getting into Helen's Tinder account wasn't hard.
This is so risky. Perhaps too risky. At this point, the child is hacking the adult. Why are they not watching what she's doing on the PC? Control your child. She's a hacker.
I knew her email, and she's the kind of person who uses the word password as her password. I made a few updates to her profile, posted some new pictures, and voila! Within minutes, she was getting messages from guys.
How old is the person telling this story? I'm kind of worried that there's an 8-year-old child on Tinder right now. That is not okay. Somebody stop this child.
Which I replied to. There was one guy, Bill, who really took a shining to Helen. I thought it was hilarious to flirt with him. He lived alone and seemed like a total weirdo.
A poor person being called a weirdo by an 8-year-old child.
He wanted to meet in person, but I kept telling him I wasn't ready yet.
Is that the first message that Bill has sent to her? I want to meet you in person. And then she's replied saying, I'm not ready. Bill, you literally just messaged us. Calm down.
He said he understood, and he kept pouring out his soul to me. He said he felt like we were soulmates. I tried not to crack up. I felt like a spy.
Somebody tried to convince me that this child is not evil. Just look at her face. She has an evil smile. She even has the eyebrows. Devil child.
My friend asked why I kept checking my phone at lunch. I told her I was Tinder flirting with Bill, and she was like, okay, but weren't you just going to use this as a way to get your dad to break up with Helen? I mean, technically now you're catfishing. It was your idea, I told her, a little hurt. I know, she said, but you seem to be taking it really far. Whatever. I love this.
Yep, she's definitely evil.
But you seem to be taking it really far. Whatever. I love this. Soon I would make sure to leave Helen's Tinder profile on the computer for my dad to discover. But one day, I logged on and I had a new message from Bill. If I don't meet you in person, I'm going to die.
What? Bill, are you okay? What do you mean you're going to die? Guys, I'm worried for Bill.
I messaged back trying to make light of it, saying that I really needed to get to know somebody before I met with them. He replied, I'm across the street from you right now. LOL.
Wait a second. How did Bill find the address? Billy's crazy. Now, is Bill as crazy as this little girl? We might find out. I don't know if I want to find out.
I freaked out. Was he serious? What are you talking about? I asked. He said, I did some research and I figured out where you live. Don't be afraid of your feelings, Helen. I need to see your beautiful face in person.
Now I'm worried for Helen. I'm worried for everybody in this story. All of them are not okay. First of all, we have the dad who's a cheater. We have the stepmom who was obsessed with Tinder. We have the crazy little girl, and now we have a Tinder stalker. Why is everybody in this story crazy?
Then I really freaked. Was he a serial killer? What had I done? And how was I going to fix this without my dad finding out? I peeked out the window. There was a car idling across the street. Heart pounding, I messaged
no.
Bill that I didn't want to talk anymore. If you break up with me, he wrote back, I'll hurt myself.
Wait a second. They were online dating? They forgot to mention that in the story, I feel. I thought they were just talking and had the idea of meeting up someday. Not that they were actually in a relationship, because now this is even stranger. Oh my goodness.
He couldn't be serious. We didn't even know each other. We weren't dating. We never even met in person. But I realized that this guy was actually crazy enough to do something terrible. I thought about calling my friend and asking advice, but I was still kind of hurt by her accusing me of catfishing. Bill said, I'm going to come to your door unless you tell me not to. But if you tell me not to, maybe life isn't worth living. I told myself to just tell him not to. His mental illness wasn't my problem, but what if he really did something to himself, and all because I had played a prank on him?
Oh goodness, girl. You have a psychopath parked outside of your house because you're pretending to be your stepmom on a dating app that she deleted. Yeah, you're in a little bit of trouble. And by a little bit, I mean a lot.
It's over, I wrote. Don't contact me again. Too late, he answered. I started having a panic attack. My dad came in and found me shaking and in tears and asked what was wrong. I didn't want to tell him, but somehow the whole story came pouring out. He immediately went outside. I went to the window and saw him beside the car parked on the street. He was shouting at the driver, then trying to reach into the window. The car sped off, tires squealing.
Why does everybody's tires look like this? Is the local garage really that bad?
Tires squealing. Dad stormed back in. Was that Bill? I asked. What did you do to him? I told him never to show his face anywhere near my house again. He whirled on me. Do you have any idea what you've done? How dangerous that was. What if he had tried to hurt you, or me, or Helen? I'd briefly ever heard my dad yell before, and definitely not at me. I didn't know what to say. Helen came in then and demanded to know what was going on. Tell her, said my dad. I was so humiliated and scared I couldn't speak.
You should be. You have caused a crazy person to come to your home. That is super bad. And potentially put your stepmom at risk. This is really bad. Why would anyone do this? Girl, you need to stop.
My dad finally got on the computer and pulled up Tinder, told me to log in. I did. Helen saw the profile that I had updated for her. She looked at the messages that I had sent to men. Then she straightened and told my dad she was going to stay with her mother. My dad demanded to know why, and she said she was not going to marry a man who had such a horrible daughter.
I don't blame her. That is actually crazy. Why would you do that? I don't understand. This child needs help.
I was so hurt and so angry. I knew that what I had done was wrong, but she was the one who had wrecked my family. I shouted at her. I don't even remember what I said. That's how upset I was. All I remember is that I ended up in my room crying into my pillow, and I heard Helen slam the front door and her car pull away. When I finally emerged from my room the next day, I was scared that my dad would still be furious, but he mostly just seemed tired. Without Helen around, he acted more like the dad I knew. "How could you do that?" was all he said. "She took you away from Mom. She ruined our family."
No, your dad did that. It was his choice to leave. Your dad was the one who was also having an affair. Girl, you be crazy.
"She's mean to me and I hate her. I miss you. And I hate how you like her better than me." I knew I sounded like a spoiled brat, but it was how I felt. To my surprise, my dad stood and hugged me. "I don't think I realized how much you were hurting," he said. "I didn't want to think about how my actions might have affected you. She just makes me happy." I told him I thought Mom had made him happy. He said people change.
What is that? This is a cursed image, and I feel uncomfortable just looking at it. Look at the arms. What is that?
After that day, I waited. I kept expecting Helen every weekend I was at my dad's. She stayed gone. No word from my dad about where she was or what was happening between them. Finally, I gathered my courage and asked him. He said he and Helen weren't going to get married after all. He said I was his first priority, not Helen. I was in shock. I should have been so excited, but I felt guilty instead.
You should do. You ruined their potential marriage. That is really, really bad. They might have lived the happiest they could ever have lived with each other, and this girl has broken them up. I just don't get this story. Why would you do that?
Over the next few days, guilt continued to shadow me. My friend was excited, singing "Ding Dong, the witch is dead" and stuff, but I knew the truth. That I'd taken away my dad's happiness. What if he resented me forever?
She's not dead, is she? She's just gone? So why was she singing that? I'm worried for all of the characters in this story. They're all crazy.
But I couldn't make myself apologize. Couldn't make myself tell him he could marry Helen if he wanted. Instead, I slipped into a new Helen-free life, and I enjoyed it so much. Without her around, my dad actually wanted to go out to do things we both liked. He felt like my dad again. But one day, I came home to find Helen in the living room.
He couldn't resist the sparkles. There she is again.
I was shocked, but then angry. My dad took me aside and said that he and Helen were getting back together. I went numb. I asked if I could go to my mom's house, but my dad said no, I had to stay here and talk. He explained that Helen was who he'd chosen, and I'd have to learn to be okay with that. Okay with the woman who called me his horrible daughter?
You were being pretty horrible. I can't deny that. And you're being pretty horrible now. Look at her face. She's being mean.
No way! I started for the door. He asked me where I was going, and I told him that I was going to live with my mother full time. "I'll talk to her," Helen told him as she followed me to my room. I felt disgusted as I heard her walking to my room. "I want to talk to you, honey," she said with her ugly voice as she opened the door and let herself in. But suddenly her facial expressions changed and her tone became very harsh. "Listen, you brat," she screamed. "You might not like me, and trust me, I don't like you either. But know that if you ever mess up my relationship again, I will mess up your life." And with that, she left my room without even giving me a chance to argue. I wanted to cry. How the hell did I end up having this witch as a stepmother? Of course, none of her threats were going to scare or stop me.
Girl, I think you should just leave it. They're back together now. Don't try to ruin it a second time.
I wasn't going to give up and just let her take my mother's place. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual because I wanted to get my coffee and breakfast before Helen woke up. To my luck, I found her standing in the kitchen making herself coffee.
So this girl must be a little bit older than I originally thought because she's drinking coffee. Because before, I thought she was a literal child. Unless this is a coffee drinking child, and then that's even more messed up.
She said good morning, but I didn't reply, and I went ahead to make my own coffee. But she didn't let it go. I said, "Good morning, you brat." as she blocked my way to the coffee machine and took my empty cup. "No coffee for you this morning, dear."
Why does she sound like that? She sounds like a villain. No coffee for you this morning, dear. Mwahaha.
I couldn't believe she was acting like this. I leaned over quickly to take my cup from her, but she moved her hand fast and the cup fell on the floor and broke into pieces. With all this noise, my father hurried to the kitchen and asked what was happening. When he came in, Helen looked at him and cried, "She tried to throw glass at me!" I looked at my father as I was shaking my head and told him that it wasn't true. But instead of believing me, he asked me to go to my room. I went to my room crying, feeling abandoned by my dad. However, after 2 hours had passed, I was shocked to hear Helen leaving the house with her stuff, and then my dad came in and told me that he heard what happened in the kitchen and that he was sorry.
Wait, so did they break up again at the end? What? Okay, this was a very, very strange story. There was an evil child and an evil lying stepmom. But now, at least I understand the title of the video. She should have never have touched the stepmom's phone in the first place. All of this could have been avoided. Anyway, guys, if you did enjoy today's video and you would like to watch another one, click here and let's go watch it together.